My name is Linda King-Brown, and I've been here at PCA&D for over 15 years. I started here as an adjunct professor in 2005, moved on to being a full professor in 2009, and then became the chair of the Liberal Arts Department in 2016. Just recently, I've also taken on the role of Dean of Faculty at the college. So I'll still be doing some teaching. It's a blended role of teaching and administrative work here at the college, and I'm excited to take on this new challenge.
Well, my name is Christina Hess. I'm the chair of the illustration department, and I've been here at Pennsylvania College of Art and Design since 2006, which would make 15 years. So my inspiration for this particular piece, the obverse especially, is just researching the massive amount of time that the women's suffrage movement took place over. So decades and decades of women fighting for this particular right to vote. And when I went into the research and I started reading stories about suffragettes and watching movies about suffragettes, I also did a deep dive into historical photography to get an idea of what women wore back then, what women looked like when they posed for photos back then. I found some really wonderful images that I used that were public domain, and they were all vintage and all historical. One in particular was a gorgeous lit portrait of an older woman, and when I saw it I knew that I had to use it, and that would be the woman in the upper right of the coin. It was a mug shot. And I didn't realize it until after I had started drawing it, and I went in and found more images of her. And I saw it was a mugshot. I thought that was pretty funny. I don't know what her crime was. I don't want to know what her crime was. I'm hoping that it had something to do with the women's suffrage movement. And that is the story I have for that. For the reverse, I went into a deep dive into the architecture of 1920. 1920, of course, the Roaring Twenties, heavily Art Deco period. I wanted to really amplify what people might have been seeing in the environment around them. So not just the women who took place in the final stages of the women's suffrage movement and the ratification of the amendment, but also what was happening around them. So using photos that I've been collecting over many years, I took a lot of images from garden grates, garden gates, old elevators from old buildings that had really beautiful gilding work. And I used all of that to create the designs around the ballot box. And with the date of 2020 going into the ballot box, I wanted to make sure that it was active and moving into the ballot box versus sitting on top in a static motion. So I came to work on this project by actually entering I guess you could say, a demonstration design competition. So the US Mint released a call for artists, which I applied for. They enjoyed my work and asked me to participate in a design that was not this particular design, it was another one. And from there, I did the design and they asked me to be part of their artistic infusion program. And what that is it's a group of artists that they come to for all of their programs, whether it be medals, coins, circulation coins, commemorative coins. So it's a very wide, diverse amount of projects that they offer. So I've been with them for about 2 years now. And one of the first programs that I was offered was the women's suffrage movement. I believe it might have been the 4th program I was offered to work on. And what usually happens is they will send a briefing and send a lot of articles and links for us to look into. And then we also meet and talk to the stakeholders. And that changes depending on the program. In this case, the stakeholders was the National Portrait Gallery and the Smithsonian in the Women's Initiative project for the Smithsonian. So we listened to what they had thoughts of for the program, and then we are pretty much given carte blanche to go any way we want aesthetically with it. So I, among several other artists, submitted designs for this program. It went through several committees, and it went through the treasurer of the Mint, and it was chosen, both sides were chosen, which I'm very humbled to be part of, obviously. For the actual process of creation, a lot of it is research, so a lot of historical research, on visuals, but as well as making sure I'm getting everything correct historically. Hats, making sure they're correct, making sure that any kind of clothing they're wearing is correct with the dates that we are signifying. In addition, watching movies and getting inspirations from different movies and different types of moods, and learning about different types of people. When I started the process of actually creating it, I created 2 designs for option for the front and 2 designs for option for the back. The designs that were picked started out as thumbnail sketches. So for illustration, when we're given a project, we start off with very crude sketches, more so just for the illustrator to run through and see compositionally if things are working. I then go into Photoshop and I compile different sketches that I've done, whether they're rough or not, and sometimes photography, if I'm using photography for reference as a base. And then I draw over top of it, and each project's a little different. With this one in particular, I used Photoshop and Corel Painter to do all of my painting and drawing over top of my original graphite sketches. And then that gives me the ability to edit very quickly. So with the obverse especially, that went through, I believe, almost 11 edits. Most of those edits were very small. Some of them were a little larger, so I originally had the hat in the foreground figure covering the eye. I wanted to add a little air of mystery, but then they asked me to show the eye. They wanted that eye to be shown. So that took a little extra time. I also, for the middle figure, originally had glasses on her, and they asked me to represent her without glasses as well. So with that design, when I went to committee, it was 2 designs of the obverse, one with glasses and one without glasses. And the one without glasses got the majority of the vote. And from there, with the text and type, I use Adobe Illustrator or I use Adobe Photoshop, depending.
I was really excited when I was given the opportunity to write this poem for Lucy Stone, who is my great-great-grandmother's aunt. When I heard about the biennial, I thought it would be a great opportunity to write a new poem in her honor, because, of course, it was the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment passage this past year, and I've been wanting to write about Lucy, as she is one of my relatives, and she's not as well known in the women's rights movement as some of the others are. So I wanted to use this opportunity as a way to honor her legacy. And so when I decided to write this poem, I knew it had to have a narrative quality to it, which is not how I typically write poetry. And so this was a challenge for me because I wanted to tell her story, but I also wanted to speak in a poetic voice versus a prose voice. And so it took me some time to figure out how I wanted to write the poem. And what ended up happening is that I decided to use a traditional poetic form, which is called the Ballad Stanza, which is a narrative style, a short narrative style of poetry that consists of 4-line stanzas that have a specific rhyme scheme to them, and it derives from song. And so it was meant to be heard out loud, meant to be shared in a conversational way that had a poetic and musical quality to it. So it all came together when I decided to use that format, and I've never written in that format before. So I was able to tell her story and wanted to make sure that I did the research as well to make sure that the facts that I was including in the poem were correct. When I was finished with the poem and had sent it off for this show, I reached out to the West Brookfield Historical Society in Massachusetts, where Lucy's homestead is, and where my relatives are from, where my relatives still live, where my parents both grew up. And they gave me the opportunity to post the poem on their website, which was really an exciting connection for me, to be able to connect this show to their historical society, particularly because her homestead is being considered and actually has been nominated for the National Register of Historic Places just this year. it's happening right now. So the timing was pretty perfect.
I am currently working on many different programs at the moment, and I will continue to work on some of the programs for the United States Mint. Unfortunately, for times like this, I cannot talk about them because they are non-disclosure agreements. However, if they come out and they are minted, then I can talk about them at the time. But things I can talk about that I will be doing is in the summer of 2022, I will be presenting at ICON, which is a illustration conference, and I will be presenting a workshop, I guess you could say, on entrepreneurship in the classroom. This was actually slotted to be in 2020, however, they had to postpone it to their next conference, and it's a biennial conference. And in addition, I'm constantly working on a personal project of mine. It's called Animals from History, so I have many other animals lined up to be anthropomorphically put into historical personalities. Maybe I'll do a suffragette in the near future to tie into this.
So what do I want to do most post-pandemic? I think most of all I want to travel. I want to be outside. I want to go to a live concert. Eat in a restaurant, all of those things that we all have been missing. In terms of my professional work, I'm, during this school year, really diving into my role as Dean of Faculty, and I anticipate that in the summer I will get the chance to continue to write poetry, which is really my creative outlet in addition to gardening. Those are my two ways of creating, and I look forward to having the time to continue to work on my own work this summer in particular.